Let's talk a little bit about your summer reading assignment. I know that some people get a little bit nervous because they're not sure what to write, so I'll just step through the elements on the sheet. There are 4 books from which you can choose for your summer reading. Each of these has an element of mythology to them. So as you're reading, pay attention to how mythology plays a role in each of the texts. That's where we'll start our year in 9th grade. We'll begin with a look at world mythology. The first thing I want you to do, and this is going to be a shocker for some of you, is I simply want you to read the book for fun. Put away any notes, keep your pen away, simply read the book. Because when we get into this process of analyzing everything we read, then the book itself loses its magic. So read the book. I do like to keep some sticky notes nearby because I know that I'm going to go back and take notes over it, and that way I can just stick a note in the book and go back and analyze when I'm all done reading. When I'm all done reading, then I go back to my tabs and I begin to annotate. Annotate's just a fancy word for saying I write in the margins. I remember when I first started doing that, it was in college, and I had my textbooks and you would highlight in the textbook. One of the things I did is I highlighted everything because what if this was important? It's not a real good technique. So now I'm much more frugal with the tabs that I put into my books. But I remember when I first started to write in my textbook, I thought I was doing something wrong. Like my heart would start to beat, and my hands would start to sweat, and I thought the library police were going to come and haul me away. In actuality, when you annotate in the text, you're having a conversation with yourself, and it's a very effective tool. Remember that you only do that when it's your book. I had to have that conversation with a student last year. So if it's not your own book, don't write in it. If it's the library's book or it's my book, please don't write in it. Just use sticky notes, and that's kind of effective too, because then you can pull those sticky notes out and keep them as well. One of the things that we hope that you will do is you will begin to build a library of classical texts. And then when you are really, really old, like 30 or something, and you go back and you pull that text off of your shelf and you begin to read it, you'll see the notes that you wrote to yourself as your 15-year-old self, and it's almost like having a conversation with a different version of you. It's really, really a cool thing to do. So the first thing that I do is I go back and I find my tabs. Now, some of my students are really persnickety about how they do that. They use one color of tab for characters and they use another color of tab for motifs or symbols. I'm not that organized. A, I don't remember what the system was, and B, I can't find the right color tab at the right time. So I just tab things. The next thing that I do is I like to date a page when I'm working with a page so that I, again, as my older self, can go back. And I read the same books every year along with you, and every single year, different themes speak to me because I'm at a different place in my life. The last thing that I do is I go through and I just write some notes into the text, and I jot some ideas down. Now, I like to use what are called brackets rather than highlighting a text. So I just bracket the beginning and end of a quotation, and then I might find myself circling a word in the text. And again, some people use different colored pens, gel pens, to do this. I don't have much of a system other than I write on it. And so in this particular passage, it comes from The Sword and the Stone. And Merlin, who is the great magician who is teaching King Arthur, a young King Arthur, about what it means to be king, is having a conversation with his young student. And he always calls him Wart. Now, right in and of that, in that itself, that's kind of an interesting use of language, that Merlin calls the greatest king ever to live, and he knows that in advance because Merlin lives his life backwards. He calls him Wart all the way through. Why do you think that is? So one of the other things that's interesting here is Merlin says gently to his student, and because usually he doesn't speak very gently to him, that perhaps what is good for you might not be good for him, meaning Kay. In this scene, the young King Arthur is trying to get Merlin to tutor his stepbrother, his older brother in the home, in the same way that he tutors Arthur. Even though Kay has always been very, very mean to him, kind of like that older brother bully sort of thing. And it's kind of an interesting concept. And so I just found that one passage, and it made me start to think about the fact that Education always has to be specific to the student. I thought that was kind of interesting. So once you're all done reading, go back through your tabs and just mark your text. There's not a right or a wrong way to do it. Find a system that works for you. All right, guys, if you have misplaced your MajoWorks data sheet, just go to the Central Academy website and then click on Summer Assignments and you'll see the 9th grade assignment right there.